Well, there, the big exciting thing since the last time was the setting of the press box, and some of you might have saw a video of that. So, as far as the addition goes, same thing, moving fast and furious. Things are going well there. Ceilings are almost completely in. Lighting is almost completely in, and along with like HVAC diffusers and what we call trim out in the ceiling. The flooring is almost all completely in. They'll be putting, they're kind of, we're finishing in the band room, so the ceiling's going in today and tomorrow, and then putting in lights and everything the rest of the week. Flooring next Monday, Tuesday. They're putting wall base, rubber wall base on the walls wherever flooring's already in. All the acoustic wall panels have been installed in the chorus and the band room. All the music instrument storage has been delivered and is ready to install, as soon as we're ready for it. Trying to think what polished concrete happens next week, and that's in all the corridor, the hallway, and then into the entry area. So they'll be doing that next week, the 22nd through the 26th. The music library storage system gets installed this week. The overhead coiling door at the lower band entrance off the east side gets installed this week. And really on the outside, as we discussed, the metal wall panel, contractor's installing what he can while the remade panels are being made and sent. And Autobahn is making good headway on pouring all the concrete out front and working from the building out to the street. I think within a couple days, all they'll have left is the drive to the overhead door and then the diagonal sidewalk out to the sidewalk that's already poured at Jefferson. And then the other one is we're just waiting on Ameren for the electrical switch over. So, and we're hopeful that if not later on this week, it should be hopefully next week. So things are, like I said, progressing very well. It's the mad dash that we have on every job at the very end. So, Kurt, did you want to add anything?
ROE inspection on the second?
Oh yeah, the ROE inspection we've requested for Friday, August 2nd. So for the addition. And then obviously, as we've all discussed, we're not going to do anything with the remodel phase 2 until they're moved in and you guys have had a chance to catch your breath and be ready for the second phase. So us up on the second floor demoing the existing band and chorus and turning that into the new classrooms. So.
I went to the prime evaluation group on my phone. That group you always check everything out with. Very positive comments from the citizens about the bleachers.
Oh, good.
Everything I saw on it was very positive.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting. It'll definitely be a change for us sitting on the west side now, which I think is good. We don't get to stare into the sun anymore.
They know that.
Well, I wanted to give a shout out to Hart Directors who's working on the bleachers. I ran into Mark Hartlog a few times when I went over and was just kind of looking at the project, and he seems to be there all the time working.
Yeah.
Likes to take a break to get out of the sun and just chat a little bit, but he's pretty focused on working, but they're doing a really nice job.
Yeah, they're a good group of guys, hard workers. I know I might have said this at the last facilities meeting, but Link, who is the project manager with Southern, who holds the main contract, and then Hart works for them. He told me one time before Hart was even on site, I asked him who we were getting and what they were like, and he said, honestly, he said, I don't always get to, not all jobs are necessarily in all states are union, but because we have prevailing wage in Illinois, he can competitively bid union contract. And he said if he could pick any erector to erect a bleacher, it would be Hart Erector. So we got the best.
Yeah, he's super conscientious.
Yeah.
But so I wanted to say that, and then the other question is when we walked around it the last time, we added the sidewalk behind it, and then we didn't really go through what to do with that little. I don't know what it is, the ticket booth. And sometime probably in the future, we'll probably be changing that up a little bit, and then along with the steps. So I know the steps is a question that I'm getting in the community is what are you doing with the steps? So could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, right now, that's not part of the project at all. That's something we did look at and to see if we could do something very quickly with, but there just wasn't enough time.
Okay.
And there's a lot of issues, and I had sent an email to Joe and Kyle on it, kind of outlining, once we got out there, Joe and Corey and Jay and Bond and myself went out to look at it, and if you put it back in where it goes, it may not be as wide as what you want for the volume of traffic, but then if you make it wider to the west, it's going to interfere with the steps coming down off the new bleachers. If you make it wider to the east, it's wider than the sidewalk at the top that's been reported back, and wider than the gate. And then if you center it and maybe make it 1.5 feet wider on each side, you kind of create a problem on both sides. So one of the things that became apparent after we were looking at it, and then you also want to make sure that you don't want to put it back exactly as it is, because you want to make sure it meets the current codes in terms of tread, riser height, tread depth, and then it ties so much into what you guys want to look at in terms of phase 2. Treating that south end of the track and the bleachers, how that sidewalk might want to be wider, how it might want to move in, how that affects the storm. There was just a lot of trickle-down effect there. So I know from the get-go it was always, or at least we're only speculating, but going back to 14 when it was originally drawn, that all was kind of considered phase 2 of the athletic complex.
And I think that's like a great narrative for the community when they ask, is to say, well, we didn't want to waste a bunch of money tearing this out and putting a new one in when we knew very well that we were going to have to change it. Because I mean, even a lot of the handicapped people still park over in the fields, and there's no way for them to get up to the stadium seating, unless they go all the way down to the Pantherplex.
Oh.
And then come up. That's the only ramp that can get you in there from that side. So I mean, I think one consideration would be somehow getting a ramp up.
And that was something that I think Mr. Sander had brought up, is
Yeah.
that, if you, like I said, once you get done with this phase, take a breath, and then you start focusing on that plan, that master plan for the next phase, you could very easily probably into that hillside, carve in a switchback ramp where you would have
Yeah.
accessibility on both sides.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Our administrator shared your report with us, and it made a lot of sense.
Okay, yeah, hopefully.
It does make a lot of sense, I agree, and kind of as the new person to the table on this, I guess the piece that I fully understand why it can't happen in the next couple of weeks, I totally respect that. What I don't understand is why the cement at the bottom and the cement at the top, like all of the concrete touching it,
Yeah.
are brand new. How did that happen?
Yeah.
If this, because that's gonna either at the top or bottom would have to be taken out. I just struggle with what the
Such
law.
a little piece.
Yeah. We didn't originally design it, like I said, the design was kind of given to us from 2014. I think the concrete at the bottom was necessary because it had to receive the steps coming off the new grandstand. The concrete at the top was necessary to provide the conduit or the travel path on the backside. The stair was just kind of a piece that, again, at this time a year ago, we were budget conscious and worried about every little penny, so, right, wrong, or indifferent, the stair kind of got left for the next phase, so.
I think there are a couple of things we could probably do, and Joe put together some information on that to kind of dress it up a little bit. That'd be perfect, but it'll be nice enough to get us through until a time when we can make the right move with it. And I will say, the way that happened was the way that the whole plan was layered in. When we added that sidewalk, that's when that concrete was added at the top. Otherwise, it would have only been the concrete at the bottom, and the concrete at the top would have remained the old concrete. That was the original plan, and then we added the sidewalk.
That helps. Thank you.
Yeah. And what we have out there is definitely, like Mr. Freeman said, is a genesis or a metamorphosis of where the drawings were a year ago and where we're at now. We definitely, with the extra vomitorium and all the sidewalk in the back, that's all evolved since bedtime a year ago.
I had a question about that. So I went out there today, which I hadn't been out there, and I noticed that where those vomitoriums come off, now we have, the sidewalk has been cut, like for handicap. So the sidewalk that comes to, so now it appears that there would be 4 entrances?
Not cut, but it's just in place.
Oh, there's
Oh,
one.
I-
Just
So-
like-
The
from
concrete coming from the
Straight
sidewalk in the
from
back
the-
onto the parking lot.
Yeah.
So I guess we're gonna put gates there?
The curb.
Yeah, there's gates.
And then when we stripe the parking lots, will we account for that? Because we want to make sure if
Those
we
are just-
open those gates. we
Those
can
are just
come out.
for exits after. If
But
we-
you still want to accommodate, you don't want people parking.
I don't see why we couldn't park there. I mean, people are gonna.
I don't know, personally, I think it'd be nice to probably leave them open. I wouldn't want my car there and then have it be an exit to my car.
I think the intention, and you guys, it's your parking lot, you can direct us, but I think the intention is Autobahn's gonna stripe every spot. But then if you guys don't want people parking there, you know, you can place a barrel, or we could not, or we could add, you know, like the stripes through it. Those could be added later, once you get in and get a feel for it.
I think part of the problem is that's a dual purpose parking lot. And we can't afford to lose parking spots
Right.
within the day.
I guess,
Yeah.
So that's gonna be the issue. So for 3 or 4 events or 5 events, where that becomes an issue, we can't afford to cut out parking spots for 4 or 5 kids that can park there during the day.
but maybe gates.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a possibility.
Because
That's what
so if you're going to use it as an exit, it probably should be that. And then the other question I had, because I've gotten two, I was, my understanding at one point that in front of the bleachers was going to be fenced off so people couldn't go back and forth. And then we discussed at the last meeting, I thought that's how we left it, and then I heard differently.
You mean there would be gate?
There's a,
So
you know,
there's
about
there's the gate at
3
the edge of the
feet or
track.
whatever, yeah, between the bleachers and there.
Uh-huh.
Are we going to block that off so we don't have people walking around there kicking rocks?
You certainly could, it's not drawn or designed that way, and I think there was, initially, at least my understanding from the meetings we've had, is some people like that ability to be able to walk there, because you're actually down lower than the bleachers.
When we were meeting, Bond said it was going to be blocked off, mainly because of all that gravel and stuff in there.
Okay.
We can see kids
I don't
kicking,
remember. Is there
gravel,
gates
all
at
this
the
kind
end?
of thing.
I can't recall. I have to go back and check
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
We could easily ask Cohulan, if there aren't gates shown, we could ask him what that would be to add.
I was just curious.
We can talk
Right.
another
Yeah.
facility
Right.
meeting probably.
But I just feel like if they're doing fencing and whatever this week, that's the only reason I brought it up now, so, okay.
Well, we can take a look at it, we'll get some information for you on that. I think the original intent, remember, before we put the sidewalk in behind it, that was going to be another potential.
Well, the original
curve.
plans had it back bumping right up. There was no space in front of it.
There always was,
Yeah.
yes.
Because that space is actually
Well,
for
it
the,
was accounted for cracks, so I
Yeah.
never saw an updated plan with only 6 lanes or whatever. Okay.
yeah, that space was left there in the event of wanting to add 2 lanes on that side, whether it's, you
So
know.
the print still for someone like me to look at it, I didn't know
Yeah.
that, so it looked as if it just bumped up against. I didn't realize it was accounting for 8 cracks,
Yeah.
or 8 lanes.
So one more question that's really important. Are we still on the timeline to open? You haven't moved that timeline since the last meeting, right? The timeline for being finished? For all the projects?
No, I mean, like I said, we requested inspection on the 26th for the bleachers and on the 2nd for the addition.
Okay.
Now, obviously, phase 2, the remodel, that has shifted.
Okay.
You
Yeah,
know,
no, I'm just worried about the band chorus room and the bleachers.
yeah, like I said, the biggest issue at this point is the Ameren, which is beyond our control, so.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else?
Well, I just thought I would say, with all the weather, it got pretty crazy trying to figure out how to schedule. So I appreciate, and I think we all appreciate you guys compressing this in and working with some pretty unique scheduling and
Yeah, like-
positioning of equipment, so thank you very much.
Yes,
Sure.
definitely.
Yeah, I was talking to Kirk the other day, and I reminded him that we essentially lost 5 months, 4 to 5 months, so.
And it's been a good team working
Yeah.
together.
April and May were a little rough, but yeah, June's been good, so.
All right.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
So, while we were on the subject of all that, might as well get some, it's for our social media and how we get information out to people. I thought we're getting close to a time where people will start to ask more and more questions, as they start to register the kids. I think the grade schools are registering some of them. So probably we have plans for pushing information out, but I just kind of wanted to throw them, like about where we're going. so we know when it's all going to finish. But I think people in the community are starting to wonder, is the band going to be done? And, you know, the bleachers, and are they going to be ready for the first game? And then interesting questions like one of the things that, there's a lot of positive stuff on Facebook, but some people are wondering, you know, are there 950 seats in the new bleachers or this or that? So I thought kind of a reminder, because even I forget. And I pay more attention to it than the average person, hopefully. And, you know, so, but I was thinking, you know, a nice little thing that kind of just updates people on, we're on our timeline, here's when we expect to have these in. And then also just a kind of comparison of the old bleachers. The old home side bleachers could hold this many people, and the new ones hold this many people. And another question that people seem to be having is what's going to happen with those wider bleachers in the middle? And is there going to be a way to get certain seats, like, because I think those are sort of premium seats. And I would just say, like Pantherplex, it's not always clear who controls access to that, sort of, like who sits in the Pantherplex and who doesn't, and so on. But I mean, I think it should be, we're all of us as a community paying for those bleachers. And I think it should be clear how you can sit in the middle with those wider seats. And so I think that should be made clear to people so that it's kind of egalitarian access.
I think there needs to be a little bit of conversation with a couple of the groups that were talking about potentially using that as a fundraiser and determine what we want to do to proceed. Because at this point, right now, the way they sit, it would be wide open.
Right, and that's fine.
So, but I think at some point, you're probably going to look at bleacher rows and numbers for the potential of trying that to see if it will work, if it functions well, if it's a worthwhile type of fundraising mechanism. Because remember, all our booster clubs, all that money goes back to the kids.
Oh, yeah.
So if there's a way to provide people something they want, instead of always coming to them and selling something as a fundraiser, that's a good thing.
No, I think it's a great idea. And I mean, I've been to a lot of games at other schools, basketball and so on, where they have reserved seats. People reserve season tickets and they put a little seat in there for you and you've got your seat saved for you. So I think it's a great idea. I just want to make sure that everybody has equal access to getting that it's not just a certain pool of people that have access or can get the first seats. I think it opens up for everybody at one time and everybody can try to get the seat.
Guidelines.
And right now, we don't have anything established.
We
Right,
don't have
To
anything.
be-
and we're getting, and I know
Clear,
it's
right,
been
right.
super busy, but we're getting close to football, so.
But it won't be this year probably, right?
I'm
Okay.
not sure.
All right.
Yeah.
We don't
To be
know.
honest with you, because I think part of the discussion, it's been an off and on discussion, so I think we need to anchor that out a little more clearly.
And then, and just the positive things about it, like we're already using that, the new lab space above the second floor classroom. So just neat to get that out to the community that we're really using this already. So that's just.
Yeah, because the rumor amongst the band kids is that they're not going to have to, that it's not going to be done by band camp. So they think they're not going to have to work, but I think maybe they will. It sounds like that. So anyhow, all right. Anything else? Visitors and correspondence, we have the Good Neighbor Days letter. That's just a,
Thank you. Yes.
do we have anything else? Nobody? All right. Number 5, reports, financial reports, Joe?
Okay, what we have here is our treasurer's reports for April and May. The insurance and investment report. On the insurance side of the house, I need to remind everyone that we started with Consociate on May 1st. We do not have an updated expense report because they are building that. We'll get caught back up to that in July. Crystal and I have been working with them, so the insurance report information is, it stops at April. Like I said, we'll have that updated for July. On the investment report, this is our total in investments that we have. I do need to report out, because today we started our financial audit. And so one of the questions that came on up was with the Heartland IMA account. We've made almost $19,000 in that this year. And so that was a really, really good choice on that. But that is our investment insurance report. Going back to the agenda, I did notice something. I didn't catch it until today, and it was too late to adjust it. The expense report is 5/31/2019. Not sure how I got that in there, but the revenue report is accurate. I will send you an updated expense report. I did write down some numbers from the education fund that I pulled out of our Skyward system, and on the expense side and the education fund, we had spent just right around $15 million, just over $15 million, and that's for the education fund. We had budgeted $14,818,000. Okay, so you know, if you do the math, it's a deficit of about 80-some thousand dollars. Okay. On the O&M fund, we had budgeted $2.592 million, $2,592,000, and we had spent $1,812,000. So that's about a $200,000. After we back out, we didn't spend anything in contingency, and we also set aside the $377,000 for designated future projects, right? So there's a $200,000 net. Actually, it's a $400,000 net because we didn't spend contingency. So when you combine those two funds together, we didn't spend as much as we had budgeted between those two. I will put together a graphic for the next finance committee and go through the line items that we were over in the education fund. I'll just give you a quick snapshot of two that were significantly over. One was our tuition to out-of-district schools.
You warned us about
Yep,
that.
that one was over. And then one of our other line items was our sub-account line items, okay? Keep in mind, if we had people on long-term leave of absences, then those people that are employed in those positions are paid for out of our sub-account lines. So there's two that we were probably $200,000 over in those. And I'll put together a list of that. I've already got that, but I'll have that ready for our next finance committee meeting. So it's always fun when our auditors show on up here at WCHS for a week. And so they got started today. They really didn't throw too many things at us that we couldn't handle today. So they're off and rolling. I should have, at the end of this week, a pretty good idea of where we stand on certain accounts, and definitely by the next month, I'll be able to give you a better snapshot of that. You know, they're going to be doing some auditor adjustments. For example, you know, our fiscal year ends June 30th, but a lot of times these investment reports, we don't get those until July, and so the auditors will go back and make those adjustments so it reflects our current, you know, standing for the fiscal year. And so when it comes to the investments, what I'm trying to say is the interest that we gain in like that IMA account will be added to our year-end statement. Okay, so that's a revenue, and that's good. So we're still working on the budget. The revenue report, you'll look at this and go, 105%, how did they come up with 105% of their revenue? Well, if we take a look where we were significantly over, it was in the transfers. And if I remind you, the board approved, oops, I don't know how that happened. The board approved an additional $1 million to the capital projects fund. That was money that was set aside out of the working cash bond proceeds. And so we had budgeted $3 million of that. We took action on $4 million. And so that's why we had a total revenue of 105%. But if we take a look, local revenue came in at almost, 100%. State revenue, that's great, seeing 100% of our budgeted state revenue come on in. And then federal revenue came in at 94.8%. So outside of my glitch here, getting this loaded up, sent off to Debbie, I should have pulled the June 30th, not the May 31st. What questions do you have?
Do you know when you're planning on scheduling the next finance committee meeting?
It will be coming up. We've got a lot of things that will happen between now and our next board meeting. we'll most likely have something set up. We need to look at schedules and that. I need to finalize, get another snapshot of the budget. We really need to have the budget done and on file, ready, for public inspection, should anyone want to come in and review the budget a month before we approve it, and that's in September. So you back up 30 days. We'll have a finance committee meeting before then.
So you think it'll be in August then, after school
Probably
starts, or
that, I would try to hit it before we get to the start of the school year.
Okay.
So, first week in August. I am gonna try to take 5 days off here before now and the end of July, so,
better get it before school?
yep.
Well, it looks like another budget came through pretty good here, nice job.
It was good. The education fund, you'd love to come in under budget now. I can justify every one of our items that was over, and it's things that are outside of our control.
But wouldn't have done anything
Yep.
different on this.
Right.
All right, anything else? Okay, on to 6, discussion and informational items. 6.1, resignation, Molly Breckenpool, counselor.
Yeah, we hate to see her go, but she, her former employer, Bradley, gave her an offer she couldn't refuse. So she's moving on to Bradley, and that moves us in a position to hire a new counselor, which you're going to see here in a little bit.
All right. 6.2, resignation, Carol Cookie Jordan.
She's a current nurse, so the costuming position for the madrigals and for the musicals. and
Oh,
plays.
okay, I was like, what is this costume? Okay.
Yeah. So-
All right, so she's resigning from that. 6.3, resignation, Jay Belsley, assistant boys soccer coach.
Yes.
6.4, resignation, Jay Kupels, cafeteria worker. 6.5, FOIA.
We had a FOIA request, we threw it on there so you can see, and you see our response. So,
All right. 6.6, bus driver incentive program.
I wanted to throw that out there. As you know, hiring some of these positions is rather difficult, and so Kurt Nelson and Matt Reiser. Matt is in transition on the, learning all the transportation ins and outs, and so they went to the convention. This seems to be a growing trend as an incentive to try to line up some bus drivers. And so this was they put this together, and so that's why we're bringing it to the board as an information item. There's not a lot of costs associated with this, and basically the way it's laid out is if someone were to recommend someone that would start down the path of getting their bus CDL, it's not very easy. There's a lot of steps along the way. And so, someone would be given a $50 incentive for after someone that they recommended completing the 8-hour class. The applicant would be paid bus rate for the 8 hours of the course. So basically, they've got to take all of this training. They would also, a lot of times schools hadn't paid anyone to do the training. And so what we're trying to do is come up with ideas and incentives to try to fill some of these positions. This last year, we had Dick Freeman, who had been a bus driver for the district for a number of years, has retired. There's just not a lot of people lining up to fill these. And so that's what this is about.
All right.
I can see why these numbers are what they are to get people to drive the buses. I just couldn't quite figure why a recommending person would get the same $500 that the prospective bus driver would.
Part of being in the club, I don't know.
From another perspective, from an industry perspective, if I recommend an accountant and they get hired, depending on the circumstances, I get a bonus.
It seems to do all the work though.
incentive for people to start asking and bringing good talent. So it's not completely different
unusual.
industry, not unheard of.
You can make a lot of recommendations.
Right?
We have to be an existing employee. There's all sorts of stuff to it, but it's not that unusual. I've heard
Well,
in other places.
And here's the reality, you know, one of our full-time bus drivers is Mike Sluter. He retired from WCHS a number of years ago, and he's doing one of our full-time routes. Well, I say regular routes. Another individual is Jim Tenhaken. In 2 years, he's going to be retired, and where he lives, I can pretty much guarantee you, he's not going to drive to Washington Community High School on a daily basis to drive. And so anything that we can do, because it's not a quick turnaround to get your bus driver CDL. It takes several months. And, you know, so if we had a newer staff member and one of our more senior staff members, we're just trying to come up with ideas on what we can do to get people that goes, yeah, I really don't mind getting up and coming in and doing this before and after school.
Well, I lived with one of those bus drivers for a lot of years. And we used to tell people, what does your husband do? He drives the bus for the high school. Oh, yeah, and he teaches full-time on the side.
Yeah, right.
So it's important.
I mean, I used to have a CDL and drove here years and years ago. And I don't know, maybe I need a CDL.
No, George.
Taking on
You
that.
have a whole plate.
Get your change. All right, any more comments on the bus drivers? All right, facility use report.
This came up a couple of years ago about who utilizes our facility, so I just threw this on as an annual information item. And what you can see here is since I started in 2012, I've been tracking, these are just outside organizations that formally submit the request to utilize school facilities that have been approved. Okay, there's some that have probably submitted a formal request that haven't been approved, maybe because they submitted it 5 days before they needed it, and there's no way that we could process that and get everything lined up by that time. But this is a really good snapshot to see who utilizes this place. And as I mentioned to one of the contractors out here, this place is always in business, 365 days a year. It really is. I bet someone comes across, opens our doors that many days out of the school.
In actuality, we have two community centers, one over there
Yes.
and one here.
Absolutely. So it's nice to see that.
Right. Okay, what about other, we need to discuss committee reports? I think only the facilities committee met.
And since we had the report from Farnsworth, was there anything that anybody on the facility committee wanted to add to
I mean, he covered it pretty good. Unless someone else that needed more information that wasn't there.
Yeah, he covered it very well.
I think the other things we discussed were the plaque, the dedication
Yes,
plaque.
that's right.
Which is, we have that.
Yeah, we still need to come up
Oh,
with
the plaque.
material
Right.
for that. And then the lettering for the name. And it was brought up, and so question for the board, when you get to the point where you're officially naming it, one thing that was brought up was, do you name it, let's see, Center for Musical Arts or Center for the Musical Arts? So there you go.
Karen Stevens was here.
There's some wordsmithing for you.
Right.
It'll take time.
Yeah.
It'll take a long time to figure it out.
So it's just one word, but that'll be a question that I think, just as long as we're clear on what we want to do. Yeah.
There was another committee that met, was the special
That's
committee.
Right,
to
and we've
form
got,
that
I think that's
committee. Is
later
that
on
in
our
there?
agenda
Okay.
Yes.
to discuss that.
Yeah, I mean, that was another committee, so the special committee to, so we utilized board policy about naming facilities. And the way that works is, if somebody puts in a request for a facility to be named after someone, it goes to the board president then has to select a special committee to have a conversation about it. And within that special committee, we talked about 3 questions. Basically, should we name it after Francis Whitaker. And then the second is, if so, what do we call it? And then the last thing was, where do we put the name? And so you have the recommendation from that special committee coming up, and that's probably why there's not a whole lot of discussion about it, because as far as the board reports, the committee reports, because you're getting the whole conversation in this next item.
You outlined the, what happened in that committee very nicely. I mean, if you weren't there, you could read through what the discussions were, so there was a lot of good discussion.
It was a good day.
This time, we're fine, so.
So do we need to, we'll talk about what the ad hoc is
Yes.
now or?
When we get to it.
Okay, all right. So, that's committee. Do we have any others? All right. On to the consent agenda. So we have approving the, let's see, 7.1.1, the regular board meeting minutes, June 10th, 2019, and 7.2, just bills. I don't know if you have to write down on yours. Did you look through this? Okay.
It's just 7-1 and 7-2.
Someone too. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda and resolution 7.1 and 7.2 as recommended?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any comments? All right. Motion passed. We have roll call.
McNutt,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Knopfinger,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Seaman, yes, Essing.
Yes. All right. Motion passed. 8 action items. 8.1 is personnel. To approve the leave of absence of Nicole Dunker. Do I have a motion to approve the request for leave of absence for Nicole Dunker as recommended? So moved.
Second.
Comments? All right, a motion, a second, can we have roll call, please?
Knopfinger,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Seaman, yes, Essing,
Yes.
McNutt,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
8.1.2, certified employment. 8.1.2A, approved employment of Laura Carrillo St. John as Spanish teacher, 1-year assignment. 8.1.2B, approved employment of Carissa Yeager as counselor.
So these will be two separate.
Are they two separate motions? Okay. Sorry. Do I have a motion to approve the recommendation for employment of Laura Carrillo St. John for Spanish teacher, a 1-year assignment as presented?
So moved.
Motion second. Any comments?
This is to replace Polly Fuller, who's on the 1-year leave of absence.
Well, is this the same teacher who was replacing Polly before, so it's not new?
Yes, she
I thought so.
finished out second semester.
Anything else? All right, roll call.
Essing,
Yes.
McNutt,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Knopfinger,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Seaman,
Motion carried. 8.1.2, to approve the recommendation for employment of Carissa Yeager as a counselor as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so the background on this is, you saw Molly's resignation up above. Now, because we had hired a new counselor this year, we had a pool of candidates already, so we were able to reach back out to one of our top candidates and have a conversation with her, and she was very interested in coming here, and that's the recommendation that you have. So she was part of the first interview process for that position.
And she is an experienced.
She is.
She interned here, didn't she?
She did.
And I would expect to see more experience as things go on. This teacher shortage is changing the world. You know, it used to be that we would hire more first-year teachers or brand-new teachers out of college. Just not seeing it. I mean, it is, the numbers are not coming out of the universities. Just giving you a heads up.
Essing?
Yes.
McNabb?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
8.1.3, extracurricular employment. 8.1.3, approve employment of Eric Schimmerhorn as the head basketball coach. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
And I'll talk for a second on this. Last year was obviously a very difficult year for the basketball coach. As Kevin fought valiantly against his cancer that he had. Eric was, as the season went on, was asked to cover more and more responsibility. And eventually, by the end of the season, he kind of taken over as the head coach. He'd been our interim head coach during that time. He was also working with the team, unfortunately, when Kevin passed away. This was a very easy recommendation from my end. One of the things that we always say when we come into education is we're going to do what's best for our kids. Having some consistency, having that person who led them through such a difficult thing continue in that role is vital to the well-being of our team, and I feel strongly about that. That's why this recommendation came the way that it did. More directly, we did not open the position up. We moved Eric into a position that he needed to be moved into. So that's the recommendation from me.
I would like to commend you in the way this is handled. I think Kevin will live on with this program, and I think Eric has built a real bond with the basketball players. I don't think this will be necessarily easy for Eric because he's going to want to continue. He and Kevin are so close, almost like brothers. And but on the other hand, I think he absolutely does want to do it. And I mean, hard for him not in the coaching, but just that he'll want to put himself into it, but he also wants to carry on the legend here that was established over 15 years. I'm very happy about this. I think this is so good for our program. I think this is so good for our students to be talked about.
And I will say this, you brought up a great point. I actually sat down with Eric right away and asked him that question directly. Is this something you want to do? He does want to be the head basketball coach. In case anybody ever wants to know, that has to be the first question that we ask because I don't want to appoint somebody in a position that I don't know. So,
I'm glad you asked that, because that was a question I was going to ask, that if he felt obligated to take that position, or if that was something he truly is desiring to do. So
yes.
that'd be a good thing.
I think he wasn't he Kevin's assistant for 13 of Kevin's 14 years?
Yes.
And I will say, when it came out that we were voting on this a couple days ago, the public perception and the community and the students, this is what they wanted as well.
I think that's true.
Anything else? All right, roll call.
Fisher?
Yes.
Seaman? Yes. Essing?
Yes.
McNabb?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Motion passes. Approve the updated contract for district communication consultant. A motion to approve the
Poor Ann
updated
has to
for
sit
Ann
through
Bradford
this.
for the district communication.
I don't know.
Somebody can have that title?
Communication
Second.
All right, we already did.
Good.
You're also impressed by that. Barney, do you have any comments?
Just because this is fun to do while Ann's sitting here. She's done a phenomenal job. And as we move people forward with salaries, we want to make sure that we continue that concept even with our contractors who are working with us more directly. The service she provides has been outstanding, and we do feel that it's well done too.
It's carried us well along toward that goal, which was the primary goal of the board. And
I think she's going to give to our school.
Ann, do you want to say anything? Sorry, that was wrong. I apologize.
Okay. All right, roll call. Do we need roll call?
Butler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Seaman? Yes. Essing?
Yes.
McNabb?
Yes.
Motion passes, Ann. 8.3, approve advocates of awareness. Do we have a motion to approve advocates for awareness as an activity club at the Washington Community High School?
I move.
Okay.
We brought this last month as an information item. This is a phenomenal group. They've done an outstanding job working with both our regular division students and our students with special needs. It's been a good bridge program. We want to see it continue as a club, and this will help to establish them and solidify their place in the school.
It's really just an informal, but important part of our whole including philosophy, is it not? Where these students aren't set apart, but highly integrated. And this with peers, student peers, that they work with. I think the whole idea in all of our schools has so broken down the stigma about not understanding disabled students. When we put them with the other students and they learn how many things they have in common rather than any differences that they perceive. So I think this is really well thought out. I think it was going on before in our school, but this is organized.
So I had one question. So it has dues of $5. Do our clubs, most of our clubs have dues?
A lot of them do, especially if they have like T-shirts.
For example.
Yeah,
Right.
we have a lot of clubs who have T-shirts, but
And I think they do, Kathy. So. All right, any other comments? Okay, roll call, please.
McNutt?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Seaman? Yes. Hudson?
Yes. All right, motion passes. 8.4, approve student handbook changes. Do I have a motion to approve the changes to the 2019-20 WCHS student handbook as recommended?
So moved.
Second.
this was an information item last month. But if you're curious, there are roughly 4 or 5 paragraphs that are being changed, and they're all attached to it.
Comments? Roll call, please.
Seaman? Yes. Essig?
Yes.
McNutt?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Okay, approve the recommendation from the special committee to name the new addition. Do I have a motion? Motion to approve the recommendation from the special committee to name the new addition Francis Whitaker Center for Musical Arts, and the name will be displayed on the brick facing Jefferson Street.
Second.
Do we need to have any conversation about the wording of this? Does anyone want it any different? Center for Musical Arts, is that fine? Is that what
I think that sounds,
Mr. Coleman and Ms. Green?
That's what the committee came up with.
Okay, if that's what they came up
Yeah.
with, then that's fine.
Yeah, because I went through all of that
I know. What-
really carefully, because I didn't
Well,
want
I
to.
know, in
mess
my
it
mind, I
up.
was like, was it Center
Yeah.
for? Or the, okay.
And I think that was one of the questions that we had there.
I-
There was a lot of different ways that we were saying.
Right, but
it.
whether or not it was Center for Musical Arts or Center for the Musical Arts, that's where I got, that was my fault. Because I asked the question, so it looks good to me. Any other comments? All right, roll call, please.
Knopfinger?
yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Seaman? Yes. Essig?
Yes.
McNutt?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. 8.6, approve new addition signage, quote. The motion is to approve $6,316 for the new addition signage as recommended.
So moved.
Second.
All right. I do have a question about that, though. So when we went out there and it was going to be the silver color on brick, good, we have that up there. The W was not on the, I don't know, what, the steel, and the steel wasn't up. So now that the steel's up, I'm not sure, I mean, I don't know if that's going to be too busy, but are we having the W? Okay.
And that was one of the things we actually discussed a little bit at the facility committee meeting. I do know that Farnsworth, I'll just throw out a little inside baseball.
Sure.
Farnsworth wanted to know what the pricing on that was, so I'm sure that's why. I'm assuming they wanted to know what the pricing is because they do other projects and it's good for them to have a working knowledge of what something like that might cost.
Being the W.
Yes.
Okay.
So like a school emblem. But we were pretty clear
It was never,
that,
it was never included in the bid, is
Yeah.
what we found out.
Yes.
That was just sort of part of their rendering.
But part of it is that's set up for something to be there because all the, if you look at the steel that's going up, they're all, segregated. And then it gets to one where it's larger. So it looks like it should have some kind of signage on it.
I think it's meant to match the windows. It carries the line to the windows top and bottom.
Oh, it's the windows? Okay, because I thought it was for the signage. But that's the only part that's like that is that corner. Unless they're gonna be like that, I guess they could be like that with the windows because they're not up yet. So they're gonna be the same.
I think they're all supposed to be the
Okay.
same width,
Well, that makes sense.
all the ribs.
It's hard to piece it when you don't see it all together. And then when it gets up there, I'm like, oh, is that gonna be too much?
And it is a little bit difficult right now because we're waiting
Right.
on some of that to come in and they're installing what they can, but they can't install now because they don't have it all back from the shop yet.
I see, I didn't even think about the side over by the windows because that's not up yet.
Yes.
That was a little busy that way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think it's important to make it clear that that was, I didn't understand the reason, that was never included in the bid, that was just sort of a suggestion, so we're not paying for that, and it's not, and we're not getting it, it was never included.
Then one last thing, do you think the silver words are gonna be able to be read easily up against the brick? And I know that discussion happened, but I mean, if we have anything that color to put up against the brick and see?
I don't know that we have anything that.
I mean, I hate to order it and they're expensive and then come up and like, oh.
Well, I guess worst case scenario, if we take a look at them up against the brick and we say, boy, that's not going to be visible, it should be metallic,
Okay,
and we could get them painted, like car coated,
okay.
something that's a little more weatherproof.
I'm not trying to be difficult, I just as I've been looking at that corner now, I'm like, wow.
And we did talk about maybe a little spotlight, so at night,
Oh, that's
it
true.
would reflect and
Okay.
hopefully show.
And I think that's where you're really going to get your bang for the buck at night, when you have some lighting on it, so.
I had a question in the same vein. So the Francis Whitaker will be in 12-inch tall letters, and then the rest is in 8-inch.
Yes.
And, a lot of times I'll see places that put signage up, and it's not legible from the distance that most people are going to look at it, and it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. So I just want to, are we sure that these letters are going to be big enough to be easily readable from the street?
I can ask him the question again.
And this is what Farnsworth put together, right? I mean, you're
Yes.
assuming that they've
I
done
mean,
it before, but I agree, we want to
yeah.
make sure that.
I would just want to double check that with somebody who knows this stuff. Because like me, like when I make signs to put out in the public that I've done before, I always mock it up and put it out there and stand away and make sure it looks good from front. So I would almost, just honestly, I would almost be tempted to cut out. I know it's a lot. I don't think you should do this, but
Maybe just
but
one
somehow
line.
somebody
More
go
getting
up
out
there.
the scissors.
Right, and just actually hold it up and see if it's legible, because it's.
The
Can you measure what's currently up there on the.
Well, the second one is only 8
High
inches,
school,
and that's
measure
pretty
those
small.
letters, because that's recessed further away from the road.
Okay, so Joe just said one things we could do is measure what's currently up on WCHS. to
Which
see-
that's
Oh,
a lot.
great.
I think that's
Uh-huh.
quite a bit.
I think those are pretty significantly large letters.
Which we don't maybe want them quite.
How far do you think we want this to be visible from?
I think if you stand on the sidewalk, if you stand on the sidewalk across the street, I think that's reasonable.
Okay,
you know.
And this,
so,
just like fact, letters that are 12 inches high are generally visible from 120 feet away.
How about,
That's the best.
how about 8 inches?
8 inches is 80. But it's viewable to 3.
Yeah, I doubt that, 100.
I mean, this is just
No,
quick,
measure the
quick,
building.
quick.
Yeah, no, that's
I don't know that for
Gotta
certain,
be
but.
under-
Yeah, it's just a double check
That's
before we
okay.
go and spend, $6,300.
Right, yeah.
is that, did you find that online somewhere?
Yeah.
No, she did that.
No, I did not know this. This is on the internet and I just, who these are from off by
while, but it's still, it's the spacing.
Oh, yeah.
That's all to
Credit for it.
scale. I mean, and I'm guessing it is. It looks
Almost appropriate, it does, but, and that is close to the sidewalk. I think you have to look at that part too.
all right, well, we'll just kind of double check.
I can give our, the guy we're working with a call and just say, hey, viewing distance, what do you expect from a 12-inch letter? I mean,
And an 8-inch.
Yeah.
Great.
So, and if he feels like, yeah, if you could, because that's the big question, is how far do you want it to be seen from space?
And it is going to
or
be,
side post?
right. And it's also going to be higher, you know, it's not going to be at eye level, it's going to be higher, so. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we'll follow up on that, make sure.
Yep.
that's good. And I guess we do have to take consideration how wide, I mean, if we get too big of letters, it doesn't fit.
Correct.
Okay. All right, are we on to roll call? Roll call for this?
Fisher?
Yes.
Seaman? Yes. Essing?
Yes.
McNabb?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
8.7, approve the milk bids. Do we have a motion to approve the contract for products and services as recommended? So moved.
Second.
Joe, I know you love.
We talked about this last month, and I did work with Central Illinois Produce to make sure that they would meet the conditions of the contract, and they were okay with that. So I've got that in writing, and that's why we'll bring it to you in July.
Any other comments? All right, roll call, please.
Ward?
Yes.
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Seaman? Yes. Essing?
Yes.
McNabb?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Motion passes. 8.8, approve the title grant consolidation district plan. Do we have a motion to approve the title grant consolidation district plan as recommended?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, real quick, as is life with changing governments and structures and all that we have to do, this is a new report that we had to put together for the state in order to access our federal funding. It's not a consolidation study. I don't know why they call it consolidated district plan, but it is a plan for the district on how we will utilize Title I funding, which basically we will utilize it the way we have been utilizing it. It mostly goes to salaries. So,
And it also encompasses all of these other,
yeah.
so it's the IDA grant, all these other grants that we write
So, okay.
And it
now I
was
get why they're not
designed-
consolidated.
to make our lives easier.
Yeah, it's all comes out.
Does Title I still cover reading programs?
Yes. Reading and math. This has been an incredible amount of work. I cannot even begin to tell you how much time Karen and I have spent on this consolidated district plan.
It's funny because it sounds like it's supposed to make it easier for you.
Well, and everything that they said in all of the webinars is, oh, this is going to be great, you know, you'll have less work to do. It has not been. It has been pain and misery. This, seriously, Steve, don't quote that. No.
There's part of me that says, Steve, quote it for every district in the state, because every time they tell us it's less work, it's not.
Are there any advantages to all this extra work?
Yes, this is all part of this accountability for all federal dollars. And so we get lumped into the same category, so when they do a national roads project and they award grants, and you have these huge companies that are taking in hundreds of millions of dollars, and then they have sub-grantees, there's all of these internal control questionnaires, and I had to do, which was new, the organizational risk management assessment, which was new. And if you literally read these questions, I don't know how a smaller school district with like a one-shop superintendent / principal has time to do any of this, because it's just an incredible amount of work that is designed. It's a one-shot approach to cover all grants from the top down, and schools are having to do this now. And they said it's going to take I don't know, maybe we won't have to do anything for the next 3 years. But that would make a break even if we did nothing for the next 3 years. Because I still had to do the IDA Part B flow through. They took one question off of that grant that I turned in already this year. One question. So, but then this thing, if you saw the whole grant, how many pages it is, but it has to be approved by the board. We haven't even submitted this grant because we can't. There's one spot on the I was grant form that says this was adopted by the Board of Education on this date. So we need you to approve this so that we can complete the consolidated district.
I'm just curious, did this come out of the federal government or the Department of Education?
I think it's tracking the flow-through dollars, so then it gets to the state of Illinois. I can't, I doubt that Iowa or Indiana or any other state has something like this, but we have to do it.
This is ISB at its finest. They take something this big and make
Oh,
it this
no,
big.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Not,
and
not Washington DC because it's federal money.
Right.
They love to throw a pile on as much as they can and then have 15 people read through it to make sure it's okay and contradict each other the entire time. So anyway, not that I have any serious feelings about that. I wrote the Title I grants for years for other districts I was in. Best I ever did was I only returned 3 times. Average was 8. So, because they have 4 different people reading it. And the first person will read it, give you comments, you follow through on their comments, the next person will read it. They don't like the direction the first guy did, make you counter what you just did, only to have the third guy it's painful, the whole process is painful, but it is what it is. So, anyway, I do appreciate all the work that Joe and Karen put into it. It did not lighten the workload because we still have to actually apply for the grant after we do all this. So if this was in lieu of the applications, okay, maybe, but it's not. It's an addition. So there you go. That's the whole thing.
Thank you, Joe.
Let's approve it.
Right.
And I'll say thank you.
We read that, yeah. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, right? So roll call, please.
Butler,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Seaman. Essing.
Yes.
McNabb.
Yeah.
Passes. 8.9, approve Miller Hall and Triggs as their school attorney. Do I have a motion to approve Miller Hall and Triggs as the school attorney with rates as presented?
So moved. Thank you, Gloria.
Okay. In a second, any comments?
They've done a great job for us.
We've had them for a lot of years.
It's a really good firm. Dennis provides incredible value, and even at that rate, seriously, great value for what he provides for
He
education.
brings a lot to the negotiating table to get things done.
Roll call?
McNabb.
Yeah.
Butler.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
Fisher. Seaman. Essing.
Yes. Motion passes. 8.10, approve contingency allowance. We have a motion to approve $21,651 from contingency allowance as recommended.
Yes.
Yeah. We had that discussion in committee.
We did. Let me look real quick. I can't remember if that came as a recommendation or if it was just a discussion. One of them came as a recommendation.
Budget,
Same.
budget.
It was from the
So this
facilities. It was a,
Oh,
we were trying to, yeah, we were trying to decide where to take some money out of for.
Still all move.
Right. I mean, we're talking for
Now,
right?
so there you
Yeah,
go.
say that. Motion second.
Second.
Any comments? Okay. Roll call, please.
Essing.
Yes.
McNabb.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Seaman.
Yes.
Motion passes. 8.11, approve 10-year health life safety survey, architectural and project management service proposal. We have a motion to approve a 10-year health life safety survey, architectural and project management services as proposal as recommended.
I move.
Second.
Yeah, I'll hit it real quick. I know this came kind of late in the game. This is something we have to do every 10 years. We need to get them in the door before all the kids show back up, because especially like in the engineering studies, they have to get up above the roofs of ceilings in every classroom, so they need to be able to move about when nobody is here. Otherwise, it spreads this out and then costs go up. We're supposed to have this done by the end of the school year, isn't that correct, Bill?
Yeah, you have a little bit of leeway. I mean, it's, the 10 years isn't definitive, like, there's a penalty if you don't get it done within that, but it's, it's something that we have to do. I tried to go back and look and see what we did the last time, and I was able to find, that's when the district selected the previous architect, came on board at that time in 2008. And so one of the first things that they did was do the 10-year health and safety study, and then shortly right after that, they put together the proposal for the referendum, $18 million referendum, and then that kind of took that transition. And they were able to do a lot of that health, life, safety work. I want to say it was just under $4 million in health, life, safety work. But since that time, it's going to be interesting to see what this produces, because we've cleaned up a lot of areas. Like all the windows have been replaced, most of the asbestos has been abated. So we're looking at other items that we've kind of known are going to hit this list. Our boilers are getting to a certain age. That'll probably make this health, life, safety list, and then a report will be done up. And that report will be combined between both the architectural services and the engineering services. And that's one of the decisions that this board made, to employ an architect and employ an engineering services, is it really sped up this process. We didn't have to go through additional interviews to select an engineering firm to come on and provide the services. And so I was not able to find what the health, life, safety in 2009 costs. I'm still going to try to find that out, just to see where, how things escalate over a 10-year period. But with my apologies, I presented this to the facilities committee on July 5th, and at that time we still hadn't received the Farnsworth agreement. We got that literally at the end of last week. And then I actually got the one on Saturday from the engineering. And so these two groups have worked hand in hand. The gentleman at Midwest Engineering Professionals has worked numerous of these with Paul Corey and Von Wagner with Farnsworth. And it really is a good handoff. And I think that the district is going to reduce the overall cost for this, because we've separated the engineering just for the engineering side of the house.
You did mention it at the facilities meeting that this would be coming up eventually, but like you said, the actual contracts weren't given to us
Until Friday, and that's the best I could get with the one on Friday, and then the other one that I got on Saturday. I will say this, we did have an email from MEP saying that, their agreement was going to be, or that they had estimated to be about $18,000, and then I got their contract on Saturday, I'm looking on my phone, I'm like, please be $18,000, and it was. There's, in this Farnsworth agreement, there is the potential that they get into something, and there could be some additional time costs that are associated with it. But we've done so much work since 2012, 11, 12. I've shared all the things that we've had prior to, and now this additional work that we have here, we're adding a pretty good chunk of square footage onto our campus. And so, Washington has grown, unlike a lot of other school districts in Central Illinois, since their last 10 years of life safety. So, I don't know, any other questions? No?
So at District 52, when we did our health, life, safety, we got information kind of two kinds: stuff that we absolutely have to do because we're at risk, and then stuff that you might consider doing if you want to do it, kind of upgrades. So I kind of suspect, like you were saying, we probably won't have a lot of the second, because you guys, yeah. so-
Lights, I mean, this was all the old, you know, T8s or T12 bulbs in here. And so all of that has been replaced.
Yeah.
And that wasn't actually a health, life, safety project, we just did it. And so now, you know, when they come on in and they survey this, pretty much guarantee that we're not gonna have any recommendation to update our
Right.
lighting in.
Between you and Ryan,
Yeah.
you
And
guys
a
have
lot
kind
of,
of kept up with a lot of stuff.
Right.
So do you think there's gonna, is there gonna be any effort to see that secondary kind of stuff, or do you think it's just not good?
I think it's good to bring to the facilities committee, you know, that one document that we've used, the designated funds project kind of document. I think that will be this will be a really nice refresh to sit there and see what, you know, there may be something that we didn't account for on that document that may come up that we go, you know, that the board or future boards are going to have to make a determination on when it comes to that. But we've done a lot of roof work already. We've got a plan to continue to do more roof work. We've set aside funds for it, so that's always good. And so, just in case you're curious, we do have a health, life, safety fund. It sits with about, well, at the end of this fiscal year, it had about $135,000 in that. You know, we levy typically about $10,000 a year in that fund. This next year, we should be sitting at about $146,000 because some of our investments that, you know, have grown in that have contributed to that. So that money is set aside. What I've always been taught to do is set that money aside for when something breaks. Let's say we had to replace all the boilers in 3 months. We have health, life, safety money set aside to replace that. So the survey between the two is going to be, what, about $58,000 between the two. I have budgeted that for the O&M fund because it is architectural and engineering services, and that's where we capture a lot of their expenses. What I'm trying to say is we've got a pot of money set aside for a project or 2 or 3 that we could utilize health, life, safety funds for. It is difficult when you spend health, life, safety funds because there's more actions that have to go through the board that your architect has to file as an amendment, and I was, and it just requires a lot of extra steps along the way to spend those funds. They're set aside funds for the health, life, safety of the school and the students and the staff. And so that's why they throw in extra hoops. So me and a lot of other business officials or CFOs will pay for the survey out of the O&M fund because we're going to get that information irregardless, and we can utilize that for like the facilities committee to make future decisions and not have to go through all the hoop jumping to spend those funds.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. And so you think that Farnsworth and MEP will give the stuff that you have to do and the kind of recommendations of things that you could consider? You'll get both of those from them?
I think so.
Because I couldn't tell from when I read it. It sounded like they were just going to do what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
But
They'll go in and they'll make a laundry list, and as we go through that, they'll develop a report, and we can, I mean, I'm going to be, me and Corey will be walking with, you know, the folks from Farnsworth and from MEP. They'll have to inspect every room in the facility. And, you know, that takes a little bit of time. They'll be able to move quicker. If we could get it done, you know, started, you know, the first week in August, they should be able to get through all the areas. Now, they can get down the boiler rooms and closets and all of that at any time, and so they'll probably come back and do that. But the MEP folks really rely on the plans and prints that they would get from Farnsworth to come on in and be able to do that. Then they make their notes, and they'll generate a report, get to Farnsworth, and then it gets filed. A report will be given to the board. I'll be able to give you some more information when that comes up. But when I went back and looked, I want to say it was late summer, early fall that BLED did that with this, you know, with the board back then, and then that commissioned. They did all the work to replace all the windows and lighting. They replaced all the lighting in both gyms, and they were able to get some grants to do some of that work. You know, we've replaced a lot of the unit vents That was in 2012, 2013 when I first got here, so a lot of the HVAC equipment has been updated in the classrooms in the 75 edition. I think we replaced 18 of them. That was all health, life, safety work. The tennis courts, we actually got a grant to help do that. That was all health, life, safety work because it was paving. So there's a lot of things, our Wilmore parking lot, that was pretty much tar and chip, but we redid it in 2016, last year, 2017. So I think we'll get that, to answer your question. We'll get both. So,
Okay, great, thank you.
Anything else? Roll call? Do we do roll call? Oh, we do motion, I'm sorry.
Second.
Now.
All right, so Warren?
Yes.
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Hessel?
Yes.
McNabb?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. So we still need to do 8.12, right?
Yes. Oh, excuse me. And I already did have a health life safety.
Right, so
Okay,
that's
I'll
what-
move it.
there's-
Okay, I'll make the motion again.
All right.
Yeah, I second.
Okay. 8.12, right?
Okay,
Wait,
yep.
wait.
So now, do we have a motion and a second for that? Okay, another roll call.
So we have Seaman?
Yes.
Hessel?
Yes.
McNabb?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Warren?
Yes.
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Now we need a motion to move into executive session for purposes of discussing minutes of meetings lawfully closed, whether for the purpose of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 2.06.
So moved.